Welcome, everyone. This is our final deep dive in this series, and it feels like we've really been on quite an intellectual adventure, hasn't it?
It really has. 16 centuries from Gupta India right up to, well, today.
Exactly. So today, our mission is really to pull all those threads together. We want to synthesize everything we've discussed about Aryabhata, his incredible work, and its truly lasting impact on science, on how we even think about the cosmos.
It's a big task, but a fascinating one. We've spent a lot of time in his Aryabhatiya, haven't we? Really digging into the mathematical systems, the astronomy.
We really have his numerical code, those clever algorithms, the massive time cycles.
And of course, that huge idea, the Earth spinning on its axis, and his explanations for eclipses, which were so logical.
Absolutely. And we didn't just look at his work in isolation. We tried to place it in context, comparing him to someone like Ptolemy.
Right, and looking at how his ideas were received back in India. People like Brahmagupta who pushed back on some things.
And then later, the Kerala school, building on his foundations in amazing ways.
Definitely. And then tracing that journey outwards, how these ideas traveled through the Islamic world, eventually reaching Europe and shaping things there.
We even touched on those bigger connections, didn't we? Like cosmic harmony, the ethics around knowledge itself.
Which brings us to today's goal, really connecting that, let's call it ancient code that Aryabhata laid down with our modern way of thinking, our modern mind.
Okay, let's start with just the scale of it. His achievement. It's genuinely hard to wrap your head around sometimes. All of that packed into just 121 verses in the Aryabhatiya.
It is astounding, that level of conciseness, but also depth. He essentially provided a systematic framework for mathematical astronomy. Think about that.
And within that, some truly foundational pieces, like the decimal system.
Yes, a clear articulation of the decimal place value system, and crucially using zero. That concept of zero as a placeholder, it's fundamental.
It really is. Can you even imagine modern computing or, well, any complex math without it?
It's almost impossible to conceive of. It just streamlines everything, and that's right there in his work.
And his mathematical constants. We talked about his value for pi.
Right. Remarkably accurate for the 5th century. Again, it's not just the number itself, but the thinking behind it, the geometrical understanding needed to even calculate it back then.
It speaks volumes about his approach.
And then there's the Kuṭṭākāra algorithm.
Yes, for solving those tricky indeterminate equations.
Exactly. Finding whole number solutions where you have sort of more unknowns than equations, like that classic problem of figuring out how many of two different items you bought if you only know the total cost.
Right.
This was a major leap in number theory, a systematic method for problems that were, frankly, baffling before.
And then you dive into the section on time, the Kālakriyāpāda.
And you see these definitions of immense cosmic cycles. It shows this ambition to grasp the vastness of time, the repeating patterns in the heavens.
He wasn't just observing. He was trying to model it, make sense of it on a grand scale.
Absolutely. And in that same part, he gives these really elegant computational methods for finding where the planets are, using iterative steps, trigonometric corrections. It's sophisticated stuff.
It's predictive. It's about building a mathematical engine to forecast celestial movements.
Precisely.
Which leads us to his model of the cosmos itself in the Golapāda section, the spherical Earth.
Spinning on its axis, I mean, that was truly revolutionary for his time.
It just explained things so much more neatly, didn't it? Like why daytime happens at different times in different places, or the concept of latitude.
Compared to older flat Earth ideas, it was a huge jump in explanatory power. And crucially, his explanation for eclipses.
Not mythology.
No, not gods getting angry or demons swallowing the sun. It was math. It was physics. It was about the geometry of shadows, the Earth's shadow falling on the moon, or the moon's shadow falling on the Earth.
That shift towards a rational mathematical explanation for natural events. That's really the core of it, isn't it?
It's a hallmark of his scientific thinking, definitely.
So, okay, this incredible work exists. But it didn't just sit there, did it? It had ripples, big ones. Let's talk about the impact, maybe starting within India itself.
Right. Well, as we mentioned, it wasn't like everyone immediately said, yes, spinning Earth makes sense.
No, there was pushback. Brahmagupta, for instance.
Exactly. A brilliant mathematician himself, but he critiqued the rotating Earth idea. He raised objections based on, well, what seemed like common sense physics at the time, like why wouldn't things fly off?
Which is a fair question from that perspective.
It is, and it shows that science progresses through debate, through challenge. Even revolutionary ideas get questioned, and that's often how they get stronger or refined.
But despite the debates, Aryabhata's influence was clearly profound for later Indian thinkers. You mentioned the Kerala school earlier.
Oh, absolutely. Centuries later, you see mathematicians and astronomers in Kerala, figures like Nilakantha Samayaj. They were directly building on Aryabhata's legacy.
Developing ideas that look remarkably like precursors to calculus.
Yes. Exploring infinite series, refining trigonometry. And Nilakantha even proposed a kind of modified geoheliocentric model planets orbiting the sun, but the sun orbiting the Earth.
So a continuous evolution of thought, clearly rooted in Aryabhata's initial work.
Without a doubt, a vibrant, ongoing tradition.
And then this knowledge starts to travel westward. How did that happen? That transmission seems so crucial.
It really was. The key catalyst was the translation movement in the Islamic Golden Age, especially in places like Baghdad.
The House of Wisdom.
Precisely. Scholars there were actively seeking out knowledge from everywhere, Greece, Persia, India, and translating it into Arabic. Aryabhata's work, alongside other Indian texts, was part of this huge intellectual exchange.
And what were the key ideas that really took root?
Well, the big ones were definitely the numeral system, that decimal place value with 0, and Indian trigonometry, particularly the concept of the sine function, which they developed from the idea of a half-chord.
So these weren't just passively received, they were adopted, worked with.
Exactly. Islamic scholars like Al-Khwārizmī integrated these Indian concepts, refined them, built upon them. The sine function, for example, became part of a much more comprehensive trigonometric system.
And this phase, this absorption and development in the Islamic world, was the bridge to Europe, wasn't it?
It was absolutely essential. Starting around the 12th century, translations began moving from Arabic into Latin. And that's how these Indian mathematical tools, enhanced and preserved by Islamic scholarship, entered Europe.
And the impact there was transformative.
Completely. Think about European mathematics and commerce before the decimal system. It was cumbersome. This new system made complex calculations practical. And trigonometry, drawing heavily on the Indian foundations via Arabic transmission, became indispensable for, well, everything.
Navigation, map-making.
Astronomy, physics, it really provided the mathematical toolkit for the scientific revolution that would unfold later.
It's quite a journey for a set of ideas.
It really is. The path wasn't always direct, but the influence is undeniable. Without those foundational Indian contributions, mediated through the Islamic world, the scientific landscape we know would look very different.
It really makes you think, okay, maybe we can shift gears slightly now. Beyond the specific models, the math, what about the underlying spirit, the principles behind Aryabhata's work?
That's a great direction because, while our specific understanding of, say, cosmology has changed massively,
The way we do science, the core principles have some deep echoes, don't they?
they really do. Look at his sheer dedication to creating a system, something consistent, something predictable. That drive to build a coherent framework based on reason and math, that's science.
He wasn't just collecting observations, he was building a model to explain them.
Exactly. And he prioritized mathematical elegance and consistency, even when it went against tradition.
Like the equal yugas, the time periods, or that spinning Earth. He followed the logic.
He did. It shows real intellectual courage, a willingness to trust the calculations, trust the reasoning, even if it leads to uncomfortable or unpopular conclusions. That's the scientific impulse right there.
Confronting what you observe with logic, with math.
Yes. And remember that phrase we discussed, where he talks about using the boat of my own intellect, svamatināvā.
Right, to navigate the ocean of knowledge.
That's such a powerful statement about the authority of reasoned inquiry, relying on your own intellect, your own investigation, and not just blind faith or tradition. That principle is timelessly relevant for science.
It really is a foundation for critical thinking. And we also touched on the cultural context. It likely wasn't just abstract number crunching for him, was it?
Probably not. It's very likely that for Aryabhata, like many in his time, understanding the mathematical order of the cosmos was also about understanding a deeper harmony, a rational structure inherent in the universe itself. Science and philosophy were often deeply intertwined.
And there was that ethical dimension too, that warning he included.
Yes, the warning against pratikañcukaṃ, against distorting or concealing knowledge, basically a warning against intellectual dishonesty.
Which feels incredibly relevant today.
More than ever, perhaps. It speaks to the responsibility that comes with knowledge, the duty to be truthful, accurate, and to pass knowledge on faithfully. It's a powerful ethical statement for any scientist, any scholar, in any age.
So, tying this back, this ancient code, these principles, these mathematical tools, they aren't just history. They are alive in our world, tangibly.
Absolutely. It's not just a philosophical lineage, it's practical. It's embedded in our technology.
Okay, let's make that concrete, the most obvious one.
The decimal system in 0. We keep coming back to it because it's that fundamental. Every calculation you do, every computer, every smartphone, the entire digital world, it all runs on binary code, which is itself dependent on the concept of place value and implicitly 0. It's the bedrock.
You literally couldn't have the modern world without it.
You couldn't, and then there's the sine function.
Seems abstract, maybe, to some listeners, but its applications are everywhere.
Everywhere. Physics, engineering, structural, electrical, mechanical sound waves, light waves, digital signal processing. If you're listening to this, the sine function is involved in getting the sound to you. If you're looking at a screen, it's involved in generating the image.
It's one of those invisible engines of technology.
It really is, developed from those geometric roots in India.
And what about the bigger picture idea? Using algorithms to predict things.
That's another huge legacy. Aryabhata creating procedures, step-by-step methods to calculate planetary positions or predict eclipses. That fundamental approach is the ancestor of all modern predictive modeling.
So meteorologists forecast the weather.
Or financial analysts model markets, or astronomers predict the next comet. They're using vastly more complex algorithms and data, of course. But the core idea of using a systematic computational procedure to forecast future states based on current understanding, that lineage traces right back.
It's mind-bending, really. So that GPS in your phone.
Relies on incredibly precise calculations of satellite orbits and timing, grounded in physics and math that built on these foundations.
Launching satellites, exploring space.
All impossible without the mathematical and computational framework that has its roots stretching back to figures like Aryabhata. There's a direct line. That ancient code is actively running within the modern mind and the technologies it creates.
Wow. Okay, so as we wrap up this whole series, let's just take a moment to reflect on the journey we've taken you, the listener, on.
It's been quite something. We've touched on geometry, algebra, trig, timekeeping, how celestial bodies move, computational methods.
And we've tried to paint a picture of Aryabhata, maybe this young, brilliant mind in 5th century India, tackling these immense cosmic questions and encoding his answers in this incredibly dense, powerful text.
And we saw how those ideas didn't stay put. They traveled, they sparked debate, they were refined, sometimes challenged, sometimes built upon, transformed over centuries and across cultures.
It's a story of transmission evolution.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember, while his specific picture of the cosmos isn't our picture today.
Our understanding has evolved.
You're right. But the tools he used,
Yeah.
keen observation, rigorous logic, the sheer power of mathematics to model reality, those are exactly the same tools driving science now.
So his work isn't just some historical curiosity.
Not at all. It's a testament, really, to the enduring human drive to understand, to find order in complexity, to build systems using reason and math to make sense of the universe.
It's a fundamental part of the human story.
It is. And maybe, as we finish, it's worth just thinking about the stars themselves, still up there, leaving in their predictable paths, just as they did for Aryabhata.
A constant reminder of that timeless quest for knowledge.
Exactly, connecting his time to ours.
Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive, and indeed this whole exploration of Aryabhata. We really hope that you've come away with a much deeper appreciation for him, for his work, and for the incredible scientific tradition he represents.
And we hope you can see how that ancient code truly did lay foundations that continue to shape our modern mind, often in ways we don't even realize day to day.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through time, math, and the cosmos.
The journey, of course, always continues, out there among the stars and deep within the code.